Everyone, we've moved on to question number 6 from the review guide. This one's pretty short and sweet. We're going to evaluate the inverse cosine of -1/2. So in order to dive in with this problem, we want to note that we do have to deal with a range restriction. And you can consult either the handout that we had from a lesson 6.3 or you can consult your textbook. But our range restriction is telling us that we're going to go between 0 and pi inclusive. So in other words, we're only going to be concerned with the first and second quadrant. So we can kind of ignore the third and fourth for this problem. Okay, the next thing that we want to note here is once we've eliminated half of that, we want to ask ourselves, okay, well, since the value that we're supposed to get is negative, where are we going to get cosine values that are negative? And the answer to that would be, well, that would be in the second quadrant. So we can now further ignore the first quadrant. So all of our attention should be focused on that second quadrant now. Because again, just to be clear, the cosine inverse of -1/2 is really asking you the question, the cosine of what mystery angle would give us an output of 1/2 if you kind of looked at the inverse form of this. So we need to ask ourselves, where would that be? Well, I know, say, from the first quadrant, a cosine of 1/2 would happen at 60 degrees. Or, in other words, we could say pi over 3 radians. So since we're over here, we can use that as a reference angle if we're not 100% sure. So here is our reference angle of 60 degrees. Because recall from chapter 5, a reference angle can only be between 0 degrees and 90 degrees. And it has to come off of the x-axis. So in this case, what I can do is I can say, well, I will do pi, so the full 180, minus this reference angle that I have here of 60 degrees, or since I'm in radians, I'll do pi over 3. And I'm just going to use my skills that I had learned with subtracting fractions. So I would need to make that 3 pi over 3 in order to get a common denominator for my first term. And I'm going to subtract that. And this ends up being 2 pi 3. And again, you may have already noted this, or you may know this from memory, so that's perfectly fine. But here is our final solution. Again, you do want to make sure that you have a good firm grasp on your unit circle. So if you have not, I would encourage you to go to WAMAP and download a blank unit circle and practice from there. If you do have any other questions, please feel free to message me. Thanks.